And it's Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. We have a special guest opportunity today. We're going to talk to Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, who represents the Hudson Valley in Congress, District 18. Congressman, how are you today?
I'm great.
Very good. Well, we enjoyed being with you on Thursday evening up in Newburgh as you recognized 11 students from your district who are going to be going very soon to the service academies. I noted 7 going to West Point. Also, you have students going to the Air Force Academy and the Naval Academy and the Merchant Marine Academy. What was it like for you? You seemed to really enjoy having a chance to greet the students and parents.
I tell you what, I look forward to it every year. And, you know, this is the conclusion of a long process. We take it very seriously. We invite everybody to apply. We do a workshop. We've got this great military service academy advisory board made up of retired and active duty reserve members from all the different service branches who really pour their hearts into it. We do interviews with all the kids, applications. I mean, it's a whole thing. And what I can tell you is that if you want to feel better about your country, just look at these young men and women who are signing up to serve. And I just really mean that. It really makes you feel great about the young generation. I know we hear a lot of negative stuff, but I want people to know there are thousands of kids out there who are right now signing up for, serious duty, for a life of service. And they're the best, they're the brightest. I mean, these kids could be going to any colleges, right? They got the grades and the sports and the extracurriculars. And to see their parents and the pride that they have in them. Look, there's a real lesson there about, what kind of culture of service and sacrifice, we're missing in so many other areas of our life. And I think that it's just a shot in the arm for me. And so, yeah, I really had a great time.
Yeah, we were at the graduation at West Point a couple of weeks ago for the class of 2022, a class we had followed since their R Day, and how proud they were and their parents. We were that day. They raised their right hand to commit to service to our country, and then we watched some of the commissioning ceremonies. We watched 16 members of the football team commission in the weight room. It was really a great day at West Point.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, look, I mean, that's another big milestone for them, right? And there's a lot of tough days in between. You were there. You heard me say it. I mean, today's a day of great pride. They're starting to get a little nervous because they got to report in just a couple of weeks, pretty much to all the different branches. They start people may not know, right? Pretty early, mid-June, end of June. And it ain't easy. I mean, that is a tough summer. They really put them through it. And a lot of these kids are in great shape. These are triple letter athletes and varsity, football players and weightlifters, all this stuff, but they get their butts kicked over the summer. And when you meet them in the fall and they're in the thick of the academics and the PT, it is a arduous journey these kids go on. But the point is that's what forges these great leaders. And when you see them at graduation, boy, you're looking at people who have experienced such growth in just those few short years. And it's just a lesson there about what commitment and sacrifice and hard work still means in a country that's always looking for a shortcut,
Absolutely. And Congressman, I just wanted to touch on this awful situation on gun violence in the country and just get your thought. The president addressed the nation last night after these terrible incidents in Buffalo and Texas, and then one in Tulsa, as well as many other mass violence, gun shootings in the country. There's been different packages that have been talked about in Congress. So what do you see as a remedy, and what do you see maybe as something that can get passed?
Well, first, I just think all of us need to slow down long enough to try to comprehend the enormity of this loss and the pain being suffered by these folks in Buffalo and Uvalde, Tulsa, but of course in so many other communities. So many times we don't even hear about them. And of course, there are communities that deal with gun violence on a daily basis, and they may not be mass shootings, but there's still kids and loved ones and innocent people getting lost. Look, I think we need to start and it's a divisive issue, and the politics come in rushing in pretty quick. But before we let that happen, we should all I like to say, can we agree that the status quo isn't working? I mean, can we just agree that we have a problem and that we have to do something differently? And you can be the most aggressive second rights amendment defender. And I hope you can say, yeah, look, we don't want to live in a country where we're losing more kids to gun violence than men and women in combat. or police officers in the line of duty. We're losing more children every year than those two categories combined. Something is wrong. And so what can we do about it? And I think there is bipartisan agreement, hopefully enough bipartisan agreement, and you know how the Senate is stacked, towards a minority of voices. So you really got to get more than a majority, right? But a super majority. So it's not easy, but I think there is bipartisan agreement. I'm hoping on things like red flag laws, where we can all agree that dangerous people who've been adjudged mentally ill should not have access during those moments of real illness. And we can do something about that. And a lot of Republicans support that. Can we agree on background checks? Can we agree on closing gun show loopholes so that you go through the same stuff if you buy it at a gun show that you would from a licensed dealer? I mean, there are some areas where we haven't even done it yet. Should do that. And then if we want to have a big debate about banning assault weapons or something, we've all been down that road before, and it's unlikely to get resolved even in the wake of these tragedies. Some of us believe that we can respect, law-abiding citizens and gun owners and still do something about this, and that there is a way through this, and that there are a lot of people making a lot of money and who've got a political axe to grind, who are in the way of the common sense that, law enforcement officers talk to police officers. They don't want to roll up and be confronted with some guy with a bigger arsenal than they have. And they don't want to be in mental health disputes or dangerous situations. So we can surge mental health resources. We can absolutely do more on school safety. Let's do that. But some of us think that there also needs to be a more serious discussion about what kind of society we want to live in, and how much is enough in terms of the heavy weaponry that we now have circulating in huge numbers in our country. And I know that's more contentious, but I would be more than willing to sit down with anybody on any side of this issue and find out where we can do more. We have to do more.
Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate that. Now, the Ukraine war that Russia initiated in February is about 100 days into it. The United States has been helping provide supplies to Ukraine, and the Ukraine army and military has done very well, but Russia still controls about 20% of the country, much of eastern Ukraine, and the war seems to have evolved into an attrition fight of artillery, just smashing apartment buildings in the country. What's your analysis of where it's at and where the war may be going, hopefully towards a resolution?
I think that's spot on. I serve in the House Intelligence Committee, so I have terrific access to the classified information on this. And what I can tell you without getting into the classified stuff is just that people should know we're doing a huge amount, that we are full court press on this thing in ways that are public and non-public. And, we have a extraordinary capability. We spend $800 billion of your tax dollars every year on national security. Good. This is where it's got to show up in terms of the exquisite collection and intelligence methods we have, in terms of our extraordinary capacity and capabilities, in terms of logistics and leveraging our alliances. I was on the border of Ukraine a few weeks ago in Rzeszów, Poland, where the 82nd Airborne is just doing extraordinary work. And what I can tell you is there is a huge amount of help moving rapidly into that country, lethal, non-lethal, humanitarian, all of it. And what the Ukrainians have done, first and foremost, is extraordinary. And, to stand down the whole Russian army, man, I don't know about you, but that's inspiring. To stand your ground. I think we all needed a hero. And I think Zelensky and the Ukrainians in general have been tough as nails. And I'm proud that the president declassified enough intelligence that our allies could get lined up, because, they were skeptical. And, Europe is always a tough sell, getting them all lined up. And, in fairness to the Germans and the Poles and the frontline states like Romania, they've been great partners to us, not just taking refugees, but in terms of being in the fight and getting out of their own way on things like Nord Stream 2 and Russian oil imports and all the economic and other issues that, in fairness, are a real counterweight to them taking on Russia. But right now, the situation is grave. I mean, we won the Battle of Kyiv, that's true. and that's fantastic. But the situation in the east is where the Russians are just trying to grind it down, as you mentioned, and they are just leveling whole cities. They're using, standoff artillery. So getting the Ukrainians better weapon systems, longer range systems, smarter systems, more drones, more anti-ship capability, more sophisticated radar so they can own their own airspace. I think that's really the key battle we're in right now, and that's happening. And so the question is whether the Russians, with their proximity and their sort of vast manpower, can go the long haul here, or whether the Ukrainians, who clearly have more spirit and more tenacity, who have more to fight for when you think about it, who have much better morale, who've already done the heroic and unbelievable thing they did, and who are getting all the weapons and assistance they need to carry this fight. My money's on Ukraine. I can't tell you how long it's going to take. I know we're killing a lot of Russians, and I wouldn't mind if Vladimir Putin dropped dead of one of these diagnoses he seems to have, because that guy's a butcher and a war criminal, and he needs to be held accountable. I don't know. I think Russia's made a grave strategic mistake here. I think they can grind it out, control a big part of the Black Sea coast. They'd really love to get through all the way over through Odessa and over this area called Transnistria on the northeastern border with Moldova, and that would allow them to essentially encircle Ukraine and connect up Russian separatist areas in the east and the west. We cannot let that happen. Whether we can expel them from Crimea and the Donbass region is a harder, longer project. But we need to be in this for the long haul. So I think there's reasons for hope, but we're in the hard part of this now. We're in the long phase, it seems to me, and we need to stay with it.
Hey, my father was a U.S. Army officer from World War II through the 1950s, and one of his assignments was go to Germany in 1950 to support the early days of NATO. Now we have NATO being joined, or applications from Sweden and Finland, and the potential of defending a very long border north-south between Eastern Europe, the NATO line, and Russia. What do you think about how NATO seems to have been united in this conflict?
Well, it's a silver lining. I mean, I wouldn't, you can never repair all the damage and the suffering that's going on, but boy, it has reinvigorated NATO, and that is, in a larger sense, a very positive development. Absolutely. I mean, my God, if Putin thought he was going to get this on the cheap, he's now got Finland and Sweden in NATO. That's another 800 miles of NATO alliance border he's got to deal with. And of course, the military budgets in Germany have doubled. They're exporting weapons now. States like Poland are begging for a permanent U.S. military presence to put a base there like we have in Germany, which we have not done in the past. Romania is more galvanized than ever to be a bulwark against Russian expansion and aggression. Those eastern frontline states. We're about Slovakia, where that government there has done great work with us, but has a very difficult sell politically at home. Remember, this is the more favorable part of the old Czechoslovakia for the Russians, and yet that government has been strong. Hungary is, always a concern, but has been there enough so far. But I have to say, the point you make about NATO expansion, it's really critical, and I do think, the strength of the transatlantic alliance, not just for Russia, but for the larger threats over the next decades of China and whatnot, is really significant. Let's remember, together with Europe, we're more than half the world's economy, and there's no match for us anywhere in terms of our long-term strategic competitors. I've heard Russia described as a hurricane, but China is climate change. China is the long-term, in some ways, more existential challenge than Russia. Can I just say one last thing? I do think on this issue of Finland. I know a lot of people who listen to your show probably like military history, and if you want a good analogy for what's going on in Ukraine, check out the Winter War that the Finns fought, with the Russians in 1939. The Finns are tough, and they stood down the whole Russian army that came in there right at the start of World War II. And fought them to a standstill in one of the most brutal and difficult conflicts of the 20th century that we don't know a lot about. There's a great book called The Winter War that I picked up when I was traveling in Finland recently. And it's a pretty good analogy for what's going on in Ukraine. And And the last chapter, when it's written, may look similar in terms of the Russians paying a grievous price of having to admit that they can't accomplish their objectives, but nevertheless of having to reach some sort of negotiated settlement, because you can't roll them all the way back either. But and I know the Ukrainians ultimately have to make those decisions. But check out what happened in Finland in 1939. I think Vladimir Putin should have studied that history a little more carefully before he started this kind of conflict.
Absolutely. And I wanted just to talk a little bit about needs of the military for a moment. General Milley, at his speech to the graduating class at West Point, talked about that the next 25 years aren't going to be like the past 25 years in terms of technology and the need, to be state of the art. On Saturday, the United States will lay the keel on the first of its Columbia-class ballistic missile submarines. I believe they're doing 10 of those. Be up in Rhode Island, actually. And the Pentagon is talking to contractors about expediting hypersonic aircraft, and obviously the ever-present fight against cyber attack. What are some of the areas that you really see as priorities for new technology spending by the Defense Department?
Right. It's absolutely critical that we lead the world on new technologies. Let me just back up and say the most important weapon we're ever going to have in any conflict, long-term or short, Cold War or shooting war, is going to be our economy. And it's going to be the strength of our democratic institutions. And we must be a strong, prosperous democracy first and foremost. That's what has allowed us to lead the world and the other allies for 70 years, 80 years. But on the question you asked, I tell you what, there are a couple of game-changing technologies. You ticked off a couple of them. We are not where we should be on hypersonic, and a lot of us are concerned about that. We need to do better. Very worried about space and particularly satellite warfare and defensive strategies there. So much of our capacity and the way we fight wars and communicate, from GPS to communications, depends on space. Let's not forget the advanced technologies of quantum computing, which could break every commercial encryption in the world, which is not just a national security issue, but would involve massive economic disruption if we don't get there first, put some values on it, and transition to higher level encryption before the bad guys get these game-changing technologies. We need to win the race to quantum. And for people who don't know, that's just advanced computing, which would be powerful enough to break all current encryption, and do some other extraordinary things. And so there are a few game-changing things. I think bio is one of those, and it disturbs me what the Chinese are doing, particularly in bio, and by that I mean cloning technology, developing pathogens that may only apply to certain people with certain genetic characteristics. And that really concerns me. I do think the persistent surveillance that we see in cities like Beijing and Moscow now present really challenges for us in terms of the type of traditional collection, intelligence gathering we do. There's a whole host of areas where we're in a race with people who don't share our values. We need to win those races. But of course, I guess that's always been true when you think about other technologies, from space to the Manhattan Project to aerial combat, and probably all the way back to armored divisions and different types of rifles. And what I can tell you is that I'd rather be us than them. I'd rather be the United States of America. And none of us wants a Cold War with China, but if we have one, we're going to win it. And we're going to do it because our values and our system is better and is ultimately incompatible with the China that President Xi is trying to build. And it's going to get tested in Taiwan over the next few years. He's coming for Taiwan, and nobody should doubt that. And some of the things we're learning in Ukraine right now, and he's learning in Ukraine right now, are going to be very relevant there too.
Okay. And just maybe a final thought. We were at New York City Fleet Week last week, met many sailors and Marines that were visiting. We were out with the Coast Guard when they commissioned a new cutter in New York in April, the Sutphin, and we're always out with the Army soldiers and enjoy meeting the Air Force flyers. And now we have the Space Force. When you think of When you think of our U.S. military soldiers, enlisted officers, what thoughts come to mind about the service they provide?
Look, man, best in the world. And, you know, come on, we can always do better, and there's going to be issues, but let's just be clear. We are the best trained, best equipped, best motivated fighting force in the world. That's true across the service branches. My dad was in the Navy, got banged up on the USS Manchester on his 19th birthday. He was very seriously injured. You know, he loved the Navy, and I chaired the subcommittee for several years for the Coast Guard. Got to go out and spend a lot of time with our coasties. Let me tell you something. Bang for the buck. $11 billion we spend out of $800 billion total on the Coast Guard. And they have, 11, 12 statutory missions, from counter narcotics to, patrolling the Arctic to port navigation and of course, just rescuing all of us when we get in trouble and a bunch of other missions. They're amazing. And getting skiffs, secure facilities on all those new cutters is critical, because so many of their missions now are intelligence-based missions, and they need to have secure communications. And they can collect on the bad guys. Those white hulls go places that the gray hulls can't sometimes. So look, you want to feel better about your country? Yeah, go spend some time with men and women in uniform. When I was in Czechia, Poland, the number one thing that the enlisted folks there were telling me is, we want to get in this fight. And I said, well, we don't want you in the fight with the Russians, but they're raring to go. They want to use their energy and their capability to help the good guys. And that's always been true of the U.S. military. And look, it just makes you proud. And on Memorial Day, when we remember all the men and women who never got to come home and live their dream, it's cool to see that there is a new generation out there that is ready to continue that mission. So people should feel good about their country and their military as we pass from Memorial Day to 4th of July. It's a hell of a fighting force.
Well, Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, representing District 18, the Hudson Valley, thank you for joining us, and thank you for going overseas and visiting with our troops, serving in Eastern Europe. That's terrific to hear.
It's an honor to do it. Thank you for letting me spend some time with you.
Thank you. And this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. We're based at Post 135 in White Plains, New York. Thanks for watching.